Yep.
Was it fun for anybody? Anyone do anything cool? No? Who had trick or treaters go to their house? No one? Who gave away candy? You did? Okay, it's just me and you.
Lots of candy.
Yeah, this is only one. Alright guys, if you're watching this, I'm Mexican, so my tradition is Dia de los Muertos, so we celebrate, it is Dia de los Muertos today, so remember that your loved ones are still always with us, not just today, but every day. So if you've lost someone or pet in the past, today's a day that you can think about them. And that is my tradition I want to share. Alright, so we're going to go into, what's the class called?
Camera knows. How to do a listing, yes, how to do a listing.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Something to do with listings. No, sorry, we're going to how to write a listing agreement the compliance way. Once again, this is Jacqueline Copeland. She's our compliance broker. She is one of the many brokers that we have at Innovative. Let's talk about, hello. Just out of respect for the class, you guys, we do want to give a good experience and we record all these classes for you to come back and watch them. Just minimize your phone conversations and side conversations. The cameras pick up audio more than we expected, and a lot of people viewing from home or going back to watch it could hear chitter chatter and side conversations. So if you buy a camera, most likely the mic can pick up what you're saying. Just minimize phone conversations inside this room. We understand to take a call, but most of us, we plan to be here in this class. We know that we can allot an hour out of respect for the instructor, right? All right, you guys know where the restrooms at. You guys know we have sodas and waters for you always. And just know if you guys need anything, we really care about each and every one of you. Always reach out if you need anything. All right, take it away. Have a good day, guys. Yeah. All right, get ready to learn. I'm so glad happy you guys have coffee. If you guys need some caffeine, remember, please help yourself, because contracts are really difficult to sit through sometimes. So you got coffee back there.
Shout out Amy from Escrow for my,
Oh yeah, Thankful Thursdays today. Stop by Escrow to get one of the many goodies you can select from it. Gift card.
Make sure you get your
and
drink.
cozy place or something else.
No.
So we do get a Starbucks gift card.
You get a gift card. So that's how they got
That's
started.
how they started. So shout out to
That's it, shout out Amy.
Escrow.
Yes.
Thank you, Sophia, the number that makes us the money. All right, bye everybody.
Alright, okay, so I'm not gonna go through all these disclosures again, because last week we did that on the purchase contract, but it's the same. It's the same agency, the same, fair housing, wire fraud, possible representation of multiple brokers, which we talked about. But I just want to get into the residential listing agreement and any attachments that you guys may need for a listing. Okay, so we'll start with that. So at the top of the listing agreement, it's going to have, you're going to want to always use the exclusive authorization and right to sell. That's the contract we want to use because we're the exclusive agent. There's a couple other ones in there. Open listing, you don't want an open listing because that means they can list with someone else. At the same time as you. So you want the exclusive. And so you're going to put all of your information in up here. So it's going to be seller's name, and then Keller Williams Lakes is always the broker. And then the biggest section that gets missed all the time is the beginning date to the ending date of your listing period. So usually I would say in this market, you want to try to get a 6-month contract. That's going to give you enough time to get it listed, get an offer in, close escrow. Some people might not want to give you a 6-month. You know, they're like, no, I'd rather do a shorter term, 90 days is fine. But try to go initially for that 6 months. And what you're going to do is you're going to put in the beginning date here and the ending date here. Here is prepared. So say today you're going to go to a property and you're going to take a listing. So we're going to put on there November 2nd, but your listing period could be different. It could be the 5th, it could be the 20th, it could be the 30th of November. It doesn't matter what date goes in there, because agents will ask us, well, I'm here today, can I start the listing contract, in a couple weeks, because they're not ready to put it on the market yet. That's totally fine. Your date prepared is going to be the day you did it and the day they sign it. But if your listing term is not going to start for a couple weeks, that's okay. Just put in that date through 6 months. And then the only stipulation to that is that if you do go on the market, say you put the 20th, but you guys end up, they're ready by the 15th. you're gonna need to go in and modify that, because now you're going into the MLS, put your listing, and you have conflicting dates, and our dates have to match. MLS is really strict with listing contract dates and MLS, when we put it in the MLS. And I'm gonna get into that more when I get to this modification form that we can use, but it's a simple modification form. All you have to do is fill out this one separate form and change listing date to start 11/15, and you're good. And then the sellers have to sign that, and then you're good to go. So it's not like, oh, I have to do a whole new listing contract. No, you don't need to. We'll just modify it. So I'll show you guys that form in just a little bit. The rest of it is going to be the property address. Is going to go here. My form's always saying here, just for teaching purposes. And then assessor's parcel number is really important. That gets missed a lot. And that is going to have to go in the MLS. And when you go to input a listing in the MLS, it's going to ask you for that and populate all the information for you that the assessor already has. So it's really important to have that number. You can obtain that number from the MLS on Relist. Or my advice is to reach out when you know you're going to take a listing, reach out to Lisa or whoever you use for title and get a property profile. And it's going to have the assessor's parcel number on there as well. So you want to have that for sure on your contract. And then the next section where it says if this property is a manufactured home, you're going to need this listing addendum. And if it's part of a probate, you're going to need this. Those two forms are really important if your listing falls under that category. The manufactured home, I'm going to go over that addendum when we get there. But you want to check that and it will populate it for you. And you're going to have to fill that out and have your clients fill that out at the time of listing. The probate is super important because if you get a probate, you can't always sell those right away. There's going to be court decisions and all that kind of stuff. So what you don't want to do, I've seen this happen before, agents put it on the market, they don't even have the right to sell it yet. And they're all of a sudden getting people in there giving offers, and the court hasn't made a decision on what's going on yet. So if you get a probate, there are certain restrictions to probate. You definitely want to, if you've never done one, work alongside someone or reach out to us so we can help you, so we know you know court gives authorization, you're good to go. I'm going to go over that form too. If the seller has full authorization, then they're probably good to go. But you have to look at that paperwork and make sure that the court has given this specific person the authority to sell this property. Because if you're signing a listing contract with someone that just says a sibling, or, say parents passed away and now siblings got the house, someone's signing a contract with you and they're not the legal one that's allowed to, you don't have a valid contract to sell that property. And then you're putting on the MLS and causing a lot of heartache for yourself. So just make sure probate's really, really particular in how it kind of rolls out. It's a long process. So just be aware of that. The next section is all the listing terms. So the listing price is going to be whatever you're going to list for. Sometimes you guys don't come to an agreement at the listing contract. So my advice in that, like say you're going to run comp still, or they're still thinking about it, but we want to get the contract signed. That's fine. In the listing terms, right? Price is going to be determined, after reviewing comps or something like that. And then you guys can do a modification to add that price in there. A lot of times agents will walk away without a signed contract because they didn't fill in something. It's okay, just make sure you say why you're not putting a price in there. And that's okay. Don't walk away without getting the contract signed. So that's our goal when we go to an appointment. So you just put that in the listing terms. The other things you would put in listing terms would be, if you have a transaction coordinator, you can put in their fee there if your client is going to pay for it. If you're going to pay for it, you don't need to put it in there. But if your client is, you put that in the listing terms, so sellers disclose that from the beginning. You can also put, a lot of agents will put, if I bring buyer, commission will drop down to a certain percentage. So say you're charging 6%, because that's what we go in, 6% is my fee. Then with say you find the buyer, you can say I'll do 4% instead, or 4.5% if I bring the buyer. You can put that in the listing terms, so they're aware you're willing to lower your fee if you bring a buyer. That could go on listing terms. Lots of things can go there. Whatever, if there's some kind of agreement you guys come upon for whatever it is, you can put that in the listing terms. There's also another section further on that has like another remarks, and you can put information in there as well. So, but usually it's TC fee here, and if you're going to lower your commission. Okay, does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, next part is the fun part, compensation to broker. There's lots of stuff going on, especially this week. There was just, I haven't even got to read the whole NAR lawsuit, but there was a lawsuit against NAR and a bunch of charges about the commission and who pays the commission. And the people that sued, I don't know who, it was like a group, like a class action or whatever, they won. So basically their suit said it's not fair for sellers to pay buyer's commission. And so a jury sided with them and they won. Of course, it's going to go to appeals and all these things now, so nobody's getting anything, but they were awarded like billions of dollars. It's insane. So compensation in the next couple years is going to change for our industry. How it's going to play out, I don't know. We don't know yet. But as of right now, when you take a listing, seller is agreeing to pay the buyer's commission as well as your commission. And how that looks in the contract is at the top. Here's one of the side of the screen. You're going to put up here, seller agrees to pay broker as compensation for services of their relationship. It's going to be 6% or whatever you guys are agreeing upon, but the total goes in that top box. So A is the total. If you're going to do a set amount, you can do that. That happens with manufacturers a lot. You'll do a set amount instead of a percentage, because I will say manufacturers, you do the same amount of work. They're just a lower price point a lot of times. So say it's a mobile home in a park for $60K. If you do a percentage, you're not making a lot. So sometimes agents will do $2,000 on each side or something like that. So you can put in a flat rate there if you need to, but mostly a percent goes in. And then down here, you're gonna put, on all of my contracts, I put 90 calendar days after the listing period. What this section basically, instead of reading it all, it just means that if somebody comes to your listing, say that you cancel your contract with or your contract expires. If someone comes to your listing within 90 days after that viewed the property, you're entitled to a commission. It's kind of like so the sellers can't try to work with the buyers direct or try to switch you out. It kind of holds them to when our contract expires, it doesn't matter. Still 90 days after, anybody that came into the home and viewed it and you can prove that they came into the home or you showed them the home, they're entitled to pay, or you're entitled to a commission.
The full commission that you guys are
Yes.
on?
That's a good one.
You're entitled to it. Mm-hmm. So if within 90 calendar days after the end of the listing period or any extension, after any cancellation of this agreement, unless otherwise agreed, seller inserts into a contract to sell, convey, lease, or otherwise transfer the property to anyone, prospective buyer, or that person's related entity who physically entered and was shown the property during the listing period or any extension you had, blah, 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 blah. So like basically it's to cut out after your contract is if you have a 3-month contract and someone came and viewed it the week before your contract expired and then all of a sudden they come back in, 2 weeks later, you're still entitled to a commission because you did show them the property. If it was a buyer's agent that showed them, that doesn't matter. It's still, you have the listing at that time when they viewed the property. So the tricky part of it, it's kind of like our buyer's agent's agreement. How do you prove it? That they came through. A lot of it is text message. They came in on Supra, pre-approval letters. So that's if you're listing a property, I always ask for them to send me your pre-approval letter before they come view the property. It has the buyer's name right on there. So they came into your property with that specific agent. How you would find out is it's going to be after it closes, but you can see on title who closed. And you're entitled to commission. John would probably John Mansour, our attorney, would say, well, then you go to court and you can get that commission. Most agents aren't going to go to that length, you know, but if it was like a sticky situation where you knew they were trying to like finagle something, or maybe that buyer's agent was trying to like, hey, I got the buyer, just wait a week for your thing to expire. That happens, unfortunately. So you worked all this time and then you're like pushed out.
So regardless of when it expires, it's 90 days regardless?
No, yeah, it's, well, 90 days, if you put 90 days here. Some agents put nothing, and so then that's it.
It's not valid.
No, it's not valid. It's not valid. So I would put something there, whether it's 30, 60, 90. Some sellers are savvy and they'll question it and go, wait a minute, what does this mean? You know?
But you would still wanna go over it though, no?
What was that?
You would still wanna go over it with them though.
Yeah, like if I'm showing the property, that's my duty during that time, and so I'm still entitled to
Yeah.
compensation for that. And so you go over that with your clients, you know, but some of them will be like 90 days, that's kind of a long time, you
Yeah,
know?
it is.
So you try to get 90 days, just like you try to get a 6 month, but you know, this doesn't always happen, so. That's what I try to put in there, but you know, you do 180?
I could
That's
for the
good.
6 months.
I mean, if you get it for 6 months, that's good, yeah.
Well, the plan is to sell it way before that anyway, so let's not get it right.
Well, yeah, you want to sell, yeah, you want to sell, that's like a whole year later.
Just in case.
That's a whole year later, yeah, that's a whole year later, so. Okay, so that's that part, and then down here, seller agrees to pay broker if there's anything else. So most of us do, like for my listings, my fee includes photography, video, you know, all my advertising. It includes all that. But sometimes you might drop your commission down and then say, okay, that's fine, I'm gonna drop my commission, but I'm gonna charge you $300 for the photography. You can do that and put it in here, they agree to pay you, or they can pay the photographer direct, whatever. It just all depends on the client.
I'm sorry, that's on C?
Yeah, on C, seller agrees to pay broker. So broker is gonna pay $300 for photos, and you can show them that, they can pay you for that, or just pay them, I'd rather than pay it direct. But the hope is that you can keep your commission up here, and you just cover all that stuff for them. But if there was extra things that you guys agreed, or it could be something like, something with the property, maybe that they need fixed and they can't really afford it, but you know it's gonna help the sellability, and you're willing, a lot of agents pay some out of pocket. It's not ideal, you know, it's not ideal, but if they're like, oh, you know, it's a couple $100 to fix something, I'll pay that now, and you need to pay me back through escrow. We can do that and put it in writing. That's the point of putting it in writing. The rest is, down here is all gonna be about how we pay the buyer's agent. So right now, it's all in here, seller's paying buyer's agent, we're gonna keep going with it until we can't, or if your seller starts, I'm not paying it, which could start happening, and that's why it's important for us to have buyer agreements with our buyers that they might need to start paying us commission. It's all just gonna depend on the house. Here, I haven't heard of many sellers offering no compensation in the MLS, but it is starting. On the East Coast, it's already started. So if you see that when you guys are going to show buyers,
Stay away.
stay away, right? It's hard, and I really want to see this house. Well,
No, you don't.
you're gonna have to figure out the compensation, for your client, because buyer's agents work hard. They shouldn't have to not get paid a compensation, you know, but our buyers don't always have it. It's gonna be interesting. California law is a bit different than a lot of the other states, so I'm really hoping that they try to do something with like the dual agency kind of
I think
thing.
probably the lenders are probably gonna offer.
Or lenders are gonna start doing stuff, you know,
I'm assuming, yeah.
something. They're gonna have to do something because.
Pay closing costs,
Yeah.
down payment, and
Yeah.
the agent, it's
Yeah,
a lot.
and I've always explained it to sellers, so my thing is, I've never had a seller question it, ever. But it's always been, when you go to buy, you didn't have to pay a commission. So when you bought this house, you didn't pay a commission, and now you're selling and you have equity, so you're paying the commission. When you go to buy your next house, you're not gonna pay commission. So it's like a flip, and sellers always seem to, okay, I don't have to pay it on that side, but I'm only paying it on this side. So to most people I ran across, it's fair, you know, like you're only paying it on one or the other, especially because, you know, that seller bought their house and didn't pay a commission. The seller paid it for them when they bought their house. So that's always how I talk about the commission with them, and it's always, okay, that makes sense, you know, I didn't have to pay it when I moved. And now I'm gonna go buy this other house after I sell this one and not pay a commission. So I'm paying it all in this transaction instead. It evens out. To most sellers, it looks that way, you know, but some, no, I don't wanna pay, why am I paying it, you know, you're gonna run into those. So we'll see how it kind of goes, you know, as time goes on. But right now, you put the whole commission up there, so 6%. And then down here in D, right here in the percentage, you're gonna put what you're offering the buying side. So if it's 6% and you're gonna offer the buying side 2.5 and you're taking 3.5, that's fine. Just put 2.5 in there. If it's gonna be split evenly, 3 and 3, then you put 3 there. But a common question sellers don't have is, well, how come it's 6% and 3%? I'm paying 9%? No, this is your total. This is what I'm gonna pay a buyer's agent if they bring a buyer to us. That's what our broker is gonna pay them, because technically it is our broker is paying them. That's how the contract works. So, they don't, that gets asked all the time, and they think they're paying 9%. That's not what it is. And then you always have a net sheet to follow up with, from escrow or from lawyer's title, it has a net sheet, it shows the 6%, and so they can see the numbers. And so they know, and they can sign that too. This is what we're agreeing on.
So what if you have the worst case scenario where the seller doesn't want to pay the buyers?
Then you take the listing and do it at 3% or whatever, and you put it on the MLS as that. You have to let them know that now our buyer pool may be lower because buyer's agents, yes, they're supposed to come show your property, but they're also not gonna receive a compensation for showing your property. So I need to be doing open houses, I need to be hoping to bring the buyer in, basically. That's our hope on a listing like that, is that we're gonna bring the buyer in, and we're gonna have to do the whole transaction for 3%. So it's just, it's annoying. Yeah, I mean, there's no like good thing about it, it's just, how is it gonna play out? I don't know. But you can also say, if that happens, you know, if I'm having to bring the buyer in, I wouldn't do 3%, I'd do 4%. If you don't wanna pay a buyer's agent, I'm gonna do 4% up here, because most likely, I'm gonna have to bring the buyer in now, so I want 4%.
So you're being the dual agent, basically.
Basically, you're doing double work, because then you're having to throw open houses, you're up ton, you know, you're having to market it and try to get a buyer in there. You know, all that, yeah.
Then you gotta run the buyers around too, and then how you gonna do both?
I know, and that's the other thing, you know, you're doing a lot of work for it, so it's only fair, you know, to give that. It just sucks putting an MLS and having 0%. It's like, really? One agent told me they saw $1 in the MLS. I was like, that's just $1.
Just do that zero.
Just do it 0. Like, what is the point? And then your realtor takes their split. Like, what are you making? 25 cents? Like, I don't know. So yeah, so we'll see how it all pans out. But yeah, you would put 2% there or 3%, whatever you're going to give to the other side. And a talking point for that, say you're gonna do 2.5 and you take 3.5. I always say, well, because I'm doing photography, I'm gonna be running all your open houses, I'm gonna be advertising in this, and this, and you have your listing consultation that kind of tells them what you're doing, but that's what that extra percentage is as well, that the buyer's agent isn't doing, you know? So if they ask, like, well, why aren't you splitting it even, you know, then you can kind of use that talking point too. Again, it depends on the client. We all know some are whatever and they sign. Some are like, no, they want to ask you all the questions. So down here, this is important. Seller represents that seller has not previously entered into a listing agreement with another broker regarding the property unless specified as follows. And seller warrants that seller has no obligation to pay compensation to any other broker except these people or entities. So this is an important question. Hopefully you don't have to write anything there, but you need to ask them this. You can search on the MLS to see if their property was listed previously. It might have not been on the MLS. Maybe they just did like a listing that didn't go on the MLS with another agent. You want to make sure if they say, oh yeah, we had it listed 6 months ago, we decided to take it off, now we're back on. Okay, huge question is, did you cancel your listing agreement with that other brokerage? I need to see that cancellation. I asked more agents for cancellations just to review them to make sure no compensation was owed. Because what you don't want is this clause right here.
Yeah, I was about to say. So you have to
And-
double check for both, for the listing contract and that to make
Yes.
sure? Oh, okay.
So they should have a copy of the listing contract and the cancellation. Because if the cancellation says that they're owed no compensation, which is usually the box checked, then you know you're clear and you're good. But if you don't have that cancellation and they're like, I don't know if I signed a cancellation, who knows? Like, you need to get that documentation. And they should, by law, they're required to have a copy. The agent has to give them a copy. Sometimes agents will hold on to listings and not let them go.
So it'll show on the MLS where it says cancel?
It should, yes,
Okay.
but it doesn't mean everything was fully signed. Just because they went in and canceled it on there, I don't go into the MLS and cancel stuff until I see an actual cancellation signed by all parties. So you just want to make sure, because what can happen is that listing agent could be like waiting around for someone else, and then they're like, oh, by the way, you owe me a compensation now because you took the listing, you owe me your commission. And the seller's like, what? I'm not paying you. Like, I'm not, what's happening? So just get that all squared away before, so you know. I've seen agents, personally for me, if I had a client that wanted to cancel because we just didn't get along, or we just didn't see eye to eye, like, or they didn't want to lower the price. That happens a lot, and you're like, can you like lower the price? Like, let's lower the price, let's be realistic, and they just don't want to be. I don't want to work with them and waste my time. Like, I don't want to keep throwing open houses and nobody's coming because it's overpriced or something like that. So if that's the case, you know, you can get out of the contract. You don't have to sit in the contract with them. You don't have to keep working with them. You can cancel with them. So sometimes agents, like, they have a seller that is kind of difficult, but they're like, they don't want to do the cancellation. They still have an active contract, but nobody's working for each other. They're not doing anything. They can have an active contract still. And then you're going and signing a listing contract, and they're like, oh no, I broke up with that broker, but they didn't do the necessary paperwork. Now you're in a contract and they're in a contract still, and it's a mess. So just make sure if they say, yes, I had it listed before, okay, let's talk about that a little more. So that would be in this section here, and just get all that necessary paperwork. And I'll look at it for you guys too, to go, okay, yeah, it's good, go ahead and list it, you're good to go. Okay? All right, next page is going to be all the items excluded and included. So if there's something that they want excluded from the listing, things, especially things that are fixed to the house, big things are like water softener. It's going to break down some things down here, but biggest things are like water softener. Some people want to take those. It's a pain in the butt to take them, but they want to take them. Ask them all those questions. Like, what things, walk through the property with them. What things do you have to take with you? You know, like some of those, I've seen those like things hanging over the islands. What are they called?
Feathers?
Yeah, no, like the things that the pots all hold on and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And those are fixed technically, but then people take them because they want to take them for their next house. And they can't because they're like, they're in the wall, you know, they're attached to the wall. So just things like that. If you notice that they have things, a lot of people want to take certain like plants that look like they should stay with the property, but they're like potted plants and stuff like that. And they're like, they're mine, like I'm taking them. Write all that stuff down. Really have a serious conversation, because you don't want your sellers to be upset when they take things and they're like, I didn't know I could take that, or they're Ring cameras, like all that kind of stuff. Make sure. It does have a section now in the contract. They just updated it with all the smart home features. So you can put included, excluded, all that. So have all those conversations with them. You also want to talk about leased or not owned items or leased items. So if they have solar, obviously is the biggest leased item. If they have solar, you're going to need to, there's a separate disclosure that needs to get filled out from them explaining the terms of the lease, or if they own it, what are the terms of that, and does it transfer to the new buyer. You're going to need all of that to put on your listing on the MLS. You need to disclose all that. Biggest thing when you take a listing with a solar, you want to try to get the solar contract from them like that day if you can, or within the next couple days. Hey, wrap up that paperwork for me so that you have the most information, because buyer's agents are going to come in and ask you, how much is it? Like, what's the term? I don't know. Like, you want to have all that information ahead of time, because when you take an offer, that buyer now has to qualify for that solar, and it can affect their loan, them not qualifying for their debt to income and all of that. So it's important to know all that stuff and that it can transfer. Most solar now can transfer. That's like a given now. It used to not be. Like hero loans and stuff like that had to be paid off through escrow. Sellers had to pay them off. They couldn't transfer them to the new buyers. So those buyers got lucky because they got solar and didn't have to pay for it, but now most of it can be transferred. Alarm system, propane tanks. Propane tanks big if the house has it, and there's another disclosure for propane tanks, but a lot of times propane belongs to a specific company. So if it's leased, it's owned or leased by a specific company, the buyer can't just change the company because it's their tank. So you need to find out that information from your seller. Hey, how much is it? All that stuff. Water softener, same thing. Those can always be leased. They're usually not, but they can. So just make sure you guys ask all those questions. I'll go through all of them. But biggest things, including and excluding. What things are they including? Some sellers are like, I'm including all of this stuff. And it's like, okay, then write it. But also, like, I always tell them, are you sure? Like, are you sure that someone else doesn't want to take the refrigerator? Like, 100% sure. Because once I put it on the MLS, I'm saying that it comes with the property. So, just make sure that they're 100% sure. Because they're not always, oh, maybe not. Maybe I want to sell it and make the money, Then just leave it off. Don't include it in the listing. They can always negotiate it. A lot of times, sellers will have a refrigerator or washer and dryer, and they're like, hey, does the buyer want to buy it? And they make money. And they can have that transaction between the two of them, and they can sell it to them, So just make sure they are 100%. Okay, MLS. This just talks about the benefits of using an MLS, and if you don't use it, what is the ramifications? I mean, we all know that's where we go to search properties. So if they don't want to have their property on the MLS, they do have to sign. It's called a SELM, SELM, Seller's Exclusion from Listing Marketing or something. That's what it's called. And basically you're saying you don't want your property to ever go on the MLS. You can also put a time specified on the SELM. So say they don't want to put it on the MLS for, a month, and then they're like, okay, then we'll put it on. Sometimes agents don't want to because they want to try to get their own buyer in, or the seller's like, hey, just go ahead and you try to market it yourself before, because they're private. Whatever the reason is, it's not very common, but some people just don't want their house on the multiple listing, and then it syndicates out to everywhere, Zillow and everywhere. So, which makes it hard as an agent to market your listing, but it just talks about all the benefits of that. This is just talking about the clear cooperation policy, where it's how we get that, like the cookies thing on your computer. And like you have to say accept or whatever, same kind of thing. Like basically their information from their property is going to be syndicated out everywhere, that they're aware that's what's happening. And it stays there for a long time. So just that they're aware of that, it's just disclosing. This next section is coming soon. You can do a coming soon status, and the days on market will not start counting. So say your client's getting their house ready, and you want to get it out there so people are like, ooh, new property coming on the market. You can do coming soon for 21 days. So you would check this box, or not check it, does not authorize you to check it if you're not doing coming soon. But coming soon is really cool for people that are trying to get their house ready for, in a week or two. You just have to know that if you hit that 21 days, it's gonna go active. You can't stop it. It's gonna go active. And if they don't want it to go active, we had one recently where the family got COVID. So like they couldn't show the property for a while, anyways. It had to go active a couple days ahead of when we wanted it to. It was fine, but I'm like, we might have to cancel it and then re-put it back on. So
Question, can't you just put it on hold?
you can put it on hold, but you can't have it on hold too long. Yeah, the MLS will start to kind of know, like, hey, they're putting it on coming soon. I don't even know from coming soon if you can put it on hold status.
Oh, from coming soon, I have to go from active to.
Yeah, I don't think it gives you the option. I don't know, I've never tried to. So I don't know if from coming soon you can actually choose hold
Got it.
from that status. I don't think so.
No, because that's the whole
Because it was-
point of
it was
the 21 days.
Yeah, and I don't think MLS is gonna let you, but when you're active, yes, you can put on hold.
Got it.
So once you go active, you can put on hold. You just have to watch how long you're doing it, because sometimes, MLS, they flag certain things and they'll be like, what's it on hold for?
And those fines are hefty, huh?
Yep, the
Yeah.
fines are really hefty, so, so yeah, so if you're gonna do coming soon, just understand that you have the 21 days, and then, put it, it's gonna go to active. Days will start counting when it's inactive. Another thing I just learned, which I'm like, how did I know this? When you put it, active under contract, the days keep counting, but if you put it pending, they stop counting. But active under contract, when you go to close, say you do active under contract, and then you put it to close, it will revert back to the days, the correct days. But it does still keep counting, so say you fall out of escrow, those days are gonna count.
If you have it pending under contract.
Yeah, if you have it active under contract. It's like it's still active, so the days keep counting, but then if you put it to closed, it will fix the days to the day you put it into active under contract, saying, okay, it was only listed for 1 week, or whatever.
But even though it's not closed and you're still under contract, you can put close.
No, like once you close.
Oh.
So say you get an offer, and you can either pick active under contract or pending. Those are your two options to put your listing into. If you put it into active under contract, which a lot of agents like to do, because they don't have all the contingencies removed, like they want to keep it active still and get maybe backups. If you put it into pending, most agents don't look in pendings anymore. And pending really is supposed to be like all contingencies that are removed, we're closing in a week or two. I always put mine right to pending. I just always have, because they never had the active under contract thing. When I started real estate, they didn't have that. So I just always do it pending, and I never really looked into why. Like, why would I keep it in active under contract, or what the reason? But I was talking to another agent about it, and they're like, the days keep counting in active under contract. I'm like, well, that's not good. That's why you want to put it to pending. But then another thing I read said it reverts back to when you put it on active under contract, those days are like kind of washed away through the whole escrow. It counts just, oh, you went into escrow 1 week after you listed the property. So it really was only on the market for 7 days or whatever. But it keeps counting, so then say you fall out of escrow, now you're gonna have all of those days still. So where pending stops the days.
Are you talking about the time period where you have your contract, like for example 90 days or?
No, on the MLS.
Right, but I'm saying, you know how you have a contract for 90 days, an example?
Yeah.
And then you go into a sale pending? Is that what you're talking about, the time frame?
Yeah, on the MLS though, like when you switch it over to pending.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll stop, because basically like so when you guys go look at a property, when you go look at an active, and it says 60 days on the market, what do you think?
Something's up.
Something's up, it's overpriced, whatever. So a lot of agents don't want that. They want like, everything sold in 2 weeks.
Yeah, as less as possible.
Less as possible.
Yeah,
And so when we were talking about this, agent said if you put it in active under contract, those days keep counting. So then say that particular escrow you were just in falls through because the buyer doesn't qualify anymore. Now you're putting it back to active, now all those days are on there.
Ouch.
So that's like why agents put it into pending, and so I'm like, that makes sense now. That I would just put it into pending. Like, I just never thought about it. I want the days to stop. Like, the day I go open escrow, I want the days to stop. So that's why I did that,
So basically what you're saying is just stay away from active one.
yeah, which kind of sucks in this market because I feel like agents still look, there's no inventory, so they're looking up active under contracts.
So those bypasses.
But if you close, and I should look into it because if you close, the days to revert back. But if you go back to active, supposedly all the days are there.
That's a risk, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a risk. But I should double check that just to make sure, like, it doesn't really, or we'll take it back to the day I put it into contract. It's more like a testing it to see. But yeah, so I don't even know how I got on all of that. Oh, the Salm and everything coming soon. So yeah, so coming soon, and then Salm is if you're going to take the seller choice broker to market the property to the public and then start marketing on the beginning date of this agreement, which would be when your agreement started, or another date. So, like I said on this page, where up here at the top, where you're writing beginning date, if you know you're not gonna put the house on the market for 2 weeks, put that date in here. But but you might not know. They might be like, I don't know, it might take me a week, it might take me, 3 weeks, who knows? You can just put your beginning date, the day you sign the contract, and then you guys can go in and do a SELM, which would be the SELM form. You don't have to put in a date here. You would just do a SELM form that says we're putting it on the market on this date. And we can do that after. You don't have to, everyone panics, like, oh my gosh, I didn't put it on the MLS. As long as we have our ducks in a row, if we ever got audited, that we have all the documentation, we're good. So as long as our client knew, it's more for being tricky, and we're trying to like market the property and not put it on the MLS and try to get a buyer and all that, and our seller's not aware. As long as our seller's aware of what we're doing, then it's fine. So that SELM form would help that, so, okay?
Got it.
Next section, a lot of this is like verbiage, it's not like super important, but you guys can read over that. Broker and seller's duty, so you have a responsibility to your clients, just like our agency said, but this section is becoming more, they added in, seller instructs broker to present offers received for seller's property and present them to seller as soon as possible, unless seller gives broker written instructions to the contrary. Or seller instructs broker not to present offers until a later time. Seller is elected to have broker hold all offers and present them to the seller on such and such date. So why this is important is because agents are saying, you're not presenting my offer. When is my offer getting presented? Blah, blah, blah. So if you have something saying, hey, seller has instructed me to present offers after first open house, or after 2 weekends of open houses, or whatever, that is something you can specify. There's a spot at the bottom, another section, you can put in there. Seller doesn't want me to present offers as they come in. They want me to present them all at one time. If they want you to present them all, as they come in, that's fine. Leave it as is. But sometimes they don't want to. They want to keep it, they want to have open house for a couple weekends. And they don't want to take the first offer that comes in. They want to see what happens. So that's just something you have in writing. So that if a buyer's agent ever went to the board and said, they didn't present my offer, they should have did it within the 3 days I submitted the offer. Well, no, our seller instructed us to do it this way. So just make sure you guys have that conversation. I usually like to send the offers. I don't send the offers to my sellers ever. I've heard agents do that. The reason I don't do that is because it has the agent's information on it, the buying agent. So now you just gave your seller all that buyer's agent information, and they can call them. Like, you don't want to do that. So I don't send it to them. I usually just say, hey, we got an offer, and these are the terms. And I send it via email. This is what they're offering us. These are the contingency periods. What do you guys want to do? Or best case is you go over it in person with them. That's the best, thing, or Zoom, whatever. But I always let them know, hey, we got an offer. Usually they care, what's the price? That's what they care about, So I try to do it as I get them. Especially in this market, it's a little easier to do that. You're not getting like 20 offers at one time. The next section is going to talk about buyer letters. Seller instructs broker to present buyer letters. If the buyer wants, or the seller wants them, you would check this box. It's defaulted now to not present buyer letters. It's not as big of a deal now. It was when everyone was trying to get their offers accepted. They would submit buyer letters. Like, my family's perfect for this neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. It runs into fair housing laws because they're putting pictures and all this stuff. So now CAR said, no, you're not allowed to. But if a seller says, no, I want them, some people are super emotionally attached or whatever, it tells them kind of the risks like they're taking, that you could be violating fair housing laws. Or do you really want to take that risk? Because sellers weren't aware that's what was happening. They just didn't know. They're like, oh yeah, I love a family like my family that grew up here, that live in this neighborhood, and you just can't do it. It's discriminating. So, so it kind of talks about like why you wouldn't do it. So just explain that to them. It's not as big of a deal anymore. The next section is investigations and reports. Seller agrees within 5 days to order certain things. Sometimes you're going to get a structural pest control, which is termite. It's just a fancy word for termite. Homeowners association documents is big. You're not going to probably get a general property inspection because the buyers are going to do that on their side. They may even do a pest control, so you might not be ordering that. But the biggest one that you want to have a conversation with them about is the homeowner's documents. That is a seller cost, and they have to be ordered when you guys open escrow, and it usually has to be paid out of pocket. And so you want to let your seller know. What I do is I call the HOA, I say, give me your HOA, whoever it is, call them, and I ask them how much are HOA documents. And how much is that going to cost my seller to order when they open escrow? I get that number for them and I let them know this is what it's going to look like. You are going to have to pay this out of pocket, so be prepared. They're like, what? You can put on a credit card or whatever, but they are going to have to pay it. And that's the biggest thing when you get an escrow with sellers. They're shocked because their agent never told them, and escrow calls them and says, hey, you got to pay $500, and they're like, for what? You know. So have that conversation at listing so they're aware. It's not my HOA, it's your HOA that's charging this. You know, it's not your fault, but you need to disclose it to them so they're aware.
Because they don't have the money, can they put it towards the escrow or no?
It just depends on the HOA company.
Oh.
So some will let it bill through escrow, but I would say 90% of them will not. You have to pay it up front. Because they're like worried it's not going to close. It's HOA. They want their money and they're not going to like do anything unless you pay them. So. The rest of the stuff is just talking about agency relationships, all that kind of stuff, a lot of verbiage. So it talks a little bit about stuff to protect us in here. So brokers are responsible for damage of personal or real property. It kind of protects us, saying put your stuff away, like don't have your stuff sitting out, don't have valuables. The same conversation I have with when you're having an open house, like put away all your stuff. I had one time a client leave an iPad like sitting on the kid left it, the teenager, my kid would do the same thing, an iPad right on their bed. And a buyer, I had like walked up there and I like looked and I was turning on the lights, but I didn't notice. And a buyer like, or a potential person like walked in, they're like, there's an iPad like sitting on the bed. I'm like, seriously? And like, you know, I grabbed it and put it in the drawer, but thank goodness they didn't steal it. Like I would have had no idea. And then my client would be like, what the heck, you know? So it kind of helps us, like, you need to have insurance to cover stuff because stuff could disappear in an open house. You need to keep your stuff locked up. So it's just a disclosure to them. Photographs and internet advertising, it kind of talks about that. If checked, they don't agree. So market the property for sale, you got to provide photographs, virtual tours, blah, blah, blah. If they don't want photos, they would check here, which is really hard to market your property. So it's always a conversation. But you have to, on the MLS, have one photo. You have to have the front of the house, always. So even if it's taken with your phone. Like it has to be on there, and it has to be on there within 2 days, or you will get fined. The other thing that has to be on there within 2 days is if you take a listing, and your listing contract says today's date, you would have to have your listing on the MLS by the 4th, or the 5th, technically. It's 2 days to get your listing inputted into the MLS.
Do the weekends count?
Yes, every day counts. So if you take a contract today, the 2nd, you just want to make sure you put it on. And if you aren't going to get it on in that much time, you want to do a modification to your listing agreement. I'll show you guys that form. And you're going to want to put that date in the MLS, not your original date, because MLS looks at it and goes, it was the 2nd, but you put it in on the 10th. Why'd you put the 2nd? You should have put the modified date that you changed the listing to. So they catch all those little things. The other thing you can't have in your photo, that it is a fine, your front photo can't have your sign. So say you take a picture and your sign's right there with your face and number on it, you're gonna get a violation for that. You're gonna get hopefully a warning, but they could send you a fine for that. It's considered marketing in your own listing, which is kind of dumb, but whatever. Key box or lockbox, have that conversation with them that, you know, do you want one or do you not? Supra obviously is the best because you can track who's going in and out of the house. You can set hours on it, so they know like nobody can get access during these hours. But definitely have a conversation with them about that. If they don't want one, you have to check the box. They don't want a lockbox. And then if it's tenant occupied, there's another form called the KLA. The tenant has to sign. And that's super important. If there's tenants in the property, they need to sign the form stating they know there's a lockbox, not the sellers, the tenants. Because now you're having people go into the property where all their stuff is. So they have to know, okay, there is people gonna be coming through the house, you know, I need to lock up my stuff and all that, but that they authorize a lockbox. Most tenants don't, to be honest. Like, it's really hard to show houses that tenants live in usually. They want appointments, no lockbox, I'm gonna be there.
I'm sorry, the KLA is signed by the tenant?
Yes. Yeah, I think the sellers have to sign it too, but the tenants have to sign it as well.
Okay.
Okay, and then sign, and they don't want to sign, then you would check the box. Everything kind of defaults to they want everything, they want to sign, they want a lockbox. If they don't want it, you would check that. It's really good to have a sign for you. And then it gets down to some other forms. We're going to go through a couple of those. REO and short sale, those are advisories that if the property is, you're not going to run into the REO one unless you're working with banks and listing bank owns. So that's not important really for us. Short sales though, if we start getting into a short sale market, you would use that short sale advisory. That has to be signed with the listing. It's just another disclosure in CAR. And then the trust advisory and the SPRP, I'm going to go over those with you guys in just a second. All of this is basically the same thing in the purchase contract about mediation and how our contracts work. You go to mediation first. And then down at the bottom, this is where everyone signs. And if you have an entity seller, which would be like a trust, an LLC, a corporation, you would check this box and you're going to put the legally authorized signer of that entity. So if it's a trust, whoever is the two trustees or one or whoever. And then if it's a probate, it's gonna, this is trust or probate. Usually trust doesn't have a case number, probate does. There'd be a case number and you put that there. So you wanna make sure you have those two things in there and then everyone signs down here, you sign down here, and you're good to go. But you have to have the authorized signer's name there and this checked. Otherwise you have to do a different form. So it's important you do it there. And then in the case that two brokers co-list, it happens, you can check this box and do this additional form. And that would list the additional broker who's co-listing with this broker. So say it's this Keller Williams and another Keller Williams in wherever, and you guys are both, or Coldwell Banker, it doesn't matter, whoever the broker is, you guys are listing it together and you're gonna split the commission or you guys have an agreement, you would fill out that. If it's just a referral, you don't need to fill out that. Say another brokerage gave you the referral and you're gonna pay them a referral agreement, you have a different agreement with them, a referral. But that's if you're both listing.
But if you have a co-broker, the percentage is still the same, either 5 or 6, whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, you guys can have a separate agreement that says we're charging 6%, but this Keller Williams is only getting 2% or getting 1.5% of that, and they're getting 1.5%, or they have to work that out separate. So buying side's still getting whatever they're getting, yeah. So that those two listing brokers have to decide what their splits are together. It could be even, or it could be one's getting 1%, one's getting 2%. It's not common that you list with someone. I would say prefer just do a referral. So say it's an agent, where those happen is say it's an agent out in LA and it's a listing out here. And they don't want to come out here because they don't want to come out here. Yeah, it's far. And so they co-list it with you because they still want the listing, they want the credit, they want a commission from it, but you're doing a lot of the work, maybe. It just all depends on your agreement. You might say, well, I want 2 then, and you're only doing 1, because I'm going to be doing open houses, and I'm going to be doing everything, but we both get credit, and you're co-listing it in the MLS. It shows both of your information, accounts, shows your credit, your sales, and all that. So it's not common, but it does happen. And then seller's advisory is just like the buyer's advisory on the contract. It's really important, and it states what sellers have to disclose. So I tell my sellers, read through this. This is your duty as a seller. This is what you have to do by California law. Read through this. And so it kind of says what they have to disclose. So that's 2 of the pages. Then the CPA is always signed. Okay, so the next addendum would be the addendum I talked about earlier was the manufactured home. So if it's a manufactured home, we have a lot of these in this office. We get a lot of these. So if your listing is a manufactured home, you need to have this attached to your listing, and you need to have information in there, and it needs to go on the MLS. These are blank a lot of times when they come through compliance, and I'm like, no, like it has to be filled out. You guys are not disclosing, and it's just, you can't ask them to remove contingencies if you're not disclosing this stuff. So it's filled out the same, kind of at the top, but then there's two different types of manufactured homes. There's gonna be a personal property that's on leased or rented land, like a park, like a senior community in Sun City or Hemet, where it's leased. The land is leased, and there's space numbers, and there's a park, it's in a park. Or a manufactured home to be sold with real property, so it's on land, but it's not fixed to the land with a permanent foundation. So usually just like a trailer on a piece of land. So the land's real, but the property's not fixed to it, so it's not real property, it's considered personal property still. Okay, so those are the two different personal property ones. Then there's real property manufacturers, which is what a lot of us do in here. And that's ones where it's fixed to the ground. It has a 433, which is the permanent foundation, and it's certified on the title. And now it becomes real property because it's actually fixed to the land. So you need to fill in all the information, you know, what the different thing is. This is hard to fill out. How much is the manufactured home worth and how much is the land worth? It's always a hard question. If you guys have issues with that, I can try to help you with it, but it is hard. It's even hard for me to try to figure it out. Sometimes escrow can figure it out for us, or title. But fill out as much as you can of this, and then when we go to escrow, there's a manufactured home purchase addendum, and that, all the information kind of transfers over to that, and then we can try to get those real numbers in, because sometimes you won't know them at listing. But fill out as much as you can, like the assessor parcel number and all that. And then down here below is the manufacturer name, the model number, the date of manufacture, the date it first sold, serial numbers, all this stuff. And you're like, where do I get all that information, right? That's what happens every time. And so the biggest thing, if you're taking a manufactured listing, my advice, and you know you are, order a prelim right away. The prelim is going to have the 433 certification on the prelim, and if it's hyperlinked, like lawyers' titles are, you click it and it opens up the whole description, and it usually has almost all this information on there for you. The manufacturer's name, the serial numbers, the HCV numbers, all of that. So most of it's there. Not always, it all depends when it got recorded and what they recorded, but most of it's on there. So that's the easiest place to get it. There's not a lot of other places to get it unless the actual homeowner hands you the document, the 433 document, which most people don't have, especially if they bought it after it was recorded.
And that goes in number 2?
Yes,
433?
number 2. And then when it says properties on local property tax roll or annual registration in lieu of tax, what those two things mean is usually most, I would say like 99% of the time, if it's on real property, so it's B, it's gonna be on the local property tax roll, just like a regular residential property. So it means you're paying property taxes through Riverside County, like normal, like you would on a house. If it's just in a park, it's most likely on annual registration with the DMV. It's different because it's not real property, it's personal property. Some of those mobiles though, in those parks, have transferred over to local property tax roll. So that's a question for your clients. Hey, did you guys do that? Have you guys transferred over to that? Instead of paying the DMV or taxes every year, do you pay Riverside County? It's the easiest way, yeah.
Are those the ones where they are not selling the actual land?
Yes.
They're just selling the
Yes.
darn manufactured
Yes.
on the land?
Yes, and a lot of them, biggest thing with those, if you're showing clients, they have space rent, and it's a lot. So keep that in mind, because they'll be like, oh, I'm buying this $40,000 mobile, yay, it's so cheap, but then you're paying $900 a month for space rent.
Right.
And people on fixed incomes and all of that, yeah.
Was that it's not the association fees, but pretty much.
You're leasing the land, basically.
Right.
You're paying a lease, and they can up those fees. They can up them yearly. They do have rent, like the rent cap on them. So they have to follow our rent cap laws in California. Thank goodness, because they would go up like crazy. But still, they can up them every every year, it's like rent, you know, your rent can get up every
Are those
year.
mostly cash transactions?
Yes, so most lenders will not loan, some hard money lenders may, if you put down a big enough amount. So if you put down 50%, then maybe you could get a loan, but you're gonna get a high interest rate, you know, all of that. So they do work for some, but not all, so yeah.
So I know this is a little off topic,
Yeah.
but I wanna sell, well, I was thinking about
Yeah.
trying to sell a manufactured home to a client.
Okay.
How do we, I got two questions.
Okay.
How do we know that that land doesn't come with the manufacturer or the trailer?
So it'll say in the MLS listing that it's leased land. So you'll know,
Look
it'll,
for the verbiage.
yes, all the verbiage should be on the listing. And when you search in the MLS, there's separate portals. So there's one that will say manufactured in a park. And then when you're searching just for one on permanent foundation, it's not manufactured in a park, because they're not gonna be fixed with the 433 certification.
Got it, okay.
So it'll say the land is leased, and it should have the space rent amount, everything on there. So you know if they're paying a lease fee, it's not, they don't own the land.
Okay, then I
Okay.
have another question.
Sure.
And I'm sorry I was running in.
It's okay.
I just got some bad news.
Sorry.
So, anyway, I have a client, well, I don't even know what to call it, but they want to rent a space
Okay.
first before they move from Santa Ana here. So they have me acting as their personal property manager to find a property for them.
Okay.
How, that doesn't have anything to do with this if they decide to maybe do a rent with an option to buy? Or is this still comes into play with that?
Well, it would, so if they're just wanting to rent a space, that's gonna be totally different than this. This is purchasing.
But if they choose to rent with an option to buy, then it goes to that.
Yeah, so then you'd have to draft up a contract for that. So, but rent to buy right now is kinda harder
They're not doing
to
it.
find, yeah, they're not. So most likely they're gonna just find a rental, and then maybe once that rent's up, like, hey, seller, do you wanna sell now? But setting up a contract ahead of time probably isn't gonna happen, just because, I mean, they're out there, but they're called lease options to buy, but they're not very common.
Well, see, that's why I asked, because these properties that they're sending me
Uh-huh.
are properties that are on Redfin, they're on Zillow, and I'm like, that's weird, because if they are planning on selling the property, why do they have it on there as a rental? So that's why I thought about it, I was like, well,
Do they get a rent to buy, your clients? Are they gonna rent while they live to buy?
yes,
So then what I would say is just do an Airbnb, have them do an Airbnb for however long, and they don't have to move their things twice.
Yeah.
It's already furnished and everything, has rooms, everything, that way they just move once to wherever
that's a
they
good
live.
idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea. Good job, Amy. Yeah.
Tell me you.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that way they're not moving things, you know, because they can
Yeah.
do that, and then they have their life going on, kids, work,
Yeah.
whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody
No,
has their hands
that's good.
full, so.
Yeah,
That could
that
work.
could work. That could work for them.
I don't even think they thought that was an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, because usually
Like a
Airbnbs
short-term.
are like even long-term too.
Yeah, you
but
can do
then-
like a long-term,
whatever,
yeah,
you
you
know what I
can do a
mean?
long-term Airbnb.
I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
they're trying to come to him in San Jacinto, so I would probably have to, sorry guys for.
We're learning. You're learning. Yeah.
I'll just talk,
Okay.
I just had a
Yeah.
question about that, because I
Yeah.
was like, well, if they're trying to find a place that's on Zillow and on Redfin,
Yeah.
it's weird that you're just not trying to find just a regular rental.
Yeah, well, and Zillow and Redfin will have rentals on them as well as purchases. So it could be, but are they sending them and it's for sale?
I can't even get in contact with any other people. So I'll
See,
talk
and the
to you
other
guys
thing is
after.
that's scary is with rentals, a lot of people put scams out there. So a lot on Zillow and a lot on all those other websites, they'll just, anybody can go post anything on Zillow. So they'll go post something and then they try to get money. If anybody asks for your
Money up
client
front.
money up front, never send them. If you haven't been physically to the property and met the seller or an agent there, do not
That's
give
what I'm going to
any
go do
kind of,
next.
yeah, because people will say, oh, I just need $200 Zelle to me. Zelle is like a red flag, big time. Cash App, or any of those. So if your clients come across it, I've seen clients in here be scammed, and they've sent money because they're like, they told us we need to give $300 before they show us the property, and then the agent would meet us and then ghost them, and they never hear from them again. So just be careful, of that. So, okay, I'm gonna finish up this, so I don't keep you guys much longer. So that's the scene agreement, and that's where you find all the information. The prelim is the best thing to do for that. The probate listing addendum, if it's a probate, it's gonna have a couple things that it's asking for. The property is a part of a probate estate or checked, it's one of these. So if your client knows if it's a I can never say that word, so I'm not even gonna try, but conservative relationship, guardianship, if they know all this stuff, then you can fill this all in. What you really want in a probate is full authority. So if they're like, I have the documentation from the court that says it's full authority, that's perfect. That's what you want, because limited authority is more court has to say. They have to say anyways, the final say, but full authority, the court kind of says, okay, this is how much the property is worth. They give it to the agent and they say, go sell it. And then come back to us when it's all done. And we'll distribute everything out and all that. So you need to have full authority. If you do a probate, you really want to work with someone that's done one before, because they're very complicated. But there is that other form and just questions you want to ask. You want to make sure the person selling, that's the biggest thing, is allowed to sell the house, because we've had them not to be. Probate's also exempt from certain disclosures. And so this just talks about that. Probate advisory kind of says what things they have to do and what things they don't have to do. Trust advisory is another one. This is more common for our office. If the property's in a trust, you're gonna get this trust advisory sign, and it says the seller must comply with all of these things. So it kind of breaks down what they have to do. Biggest thing is they have to have smoke detectors, all that kind of stuff. Seller may be exempt from filling out the TDS disclosure if they fall under certain ramifications. Just because the house is in a trust, it doesn't mean they're exempt. That happens a lot. Agents will, on the other side of transactions, they won't send us a TDS. And I'm like, you need to send us a TDS. No, it's in a trust, but the people live in the house, so they have to disclose. So a lot of people are putting their houses in trust nowadays. So if the person physically lives in the house that's signing, and it just happens to be in a trust, but they live there, they have to fill out those disclosures still, because they live there. They know what's going on with the property. The only time you get exempt is, the best example is a parent passes away, kids inherit the house, and kids haven't lived in the house maybe since they were, 10 years old or whatever, or, once they graduated. Haven't lived in the house in 30, 40 years, they would be exempt because they haven't lived there to tell you what's wrong with the property. It's really when the trust gets handed over to someone else is when you become exempt. So sometimes investors try to get out of doing that because they are like, we haven't lived in the property. I'm an investor. They still have to disclose what they know. They're not exempt.
Yeah, somebody passed away in the house.
Yeah, they have to disclose that. If they know. Sometimes investors don't know because they buy it from the bank or whatever, and they don't always know everything, but they need to fill out those forms and disclose what they do know. Okay, so that's the trust one. This form, on the contract where I showed you guys the entity seller, and you had to write their name in. If you don't fill that out, you have to fill out this one. And fill out what the entity was. So if you do it on the contracts now, they added it on the contracts for us. If you do it there, you don't have to do this form at all. But it gets missed a lot, so they kept this form in play, and usually after we open escrow, we get this signed. And then the biggest one for when you take a listing, biggest conversation is, where are you going? What are you doing? What are your plans? We always want to ask our clients that. If they plan on purchasing another home and they're not going to move unless that other home is going to go through, you need to have this seller purchase replacement signed. So basically, state seller has 17 days to find another home, and they have to close. You got to check this box on C, close of replacement property. That guarantees your seller that if for some reason they can't qualify to get another house or whatever, this is all signed by seller and buyer, they can back out of the deal because they didn't find a replacement property. If you don't have that in your forms and seller can't find a house and you're in escrow with a buyer and buyer's like, hey, I'm ready to close, and seller's like, well, I'm not because I didn't find another house and you didn't sign this form, seller has to sign their house and sell their house. You have to have this form, it's so important, it's like, should be everywhere because it's really important, and that's why you always want to have that conversation with your sellers. What are you doing? I'm not sure yet. Well, we need to figure that out because your house is going to be sold in 30 days and you got to go somewhere. So you just want to make sure you guys know, that's a duty as an agent to know what's happening next with them and have all the right documentation in place. Okay? That form is really important, and make sure you check close. This part right here. See, always check C. It is, yeah, stories. Modification of listing. This is the form I was talking about, last one. So anytime you're listing, anything changes with your listing. You would check listing agreement here, you put the date of your listing agreement between the broker, Keller Williams, principal is always going to be your seller, or whoever the client name is. You can use this for buyer broker agreements too, something's going to change. But you can put the address here, listing price change to whatever. So say you do a price reduction. This does not happen, and it should happen on every transaction. If we lower the price, and we do that on the MLS, we should have one of these signed by our clients before we make the price reduction. We all have that conversation with our client, hey, we're gonna lower it 10K or whatever, but we don't have anything in writing that we agreed to that. So this form we can do that with. We should do that on every single listing. That gets missed a lot, the price reductions, which is okay, but we should have it in writing. Expiration date, if you're gonna change, so say you're gonna get your contract a little bit longer, you can change your expiration date, or anything other in here. So other would be, like our listing contract date is now such and such date. So say today we took the listing, we're not gonna put it out for 2 weeks. That doesn't happen because seller has whatever come up. We can modify it and do it in the other section and say listing to go active on the MLS on such and such date or whatever. You can put anything in those other terms. That's the biggest thing we use it for, and I send that back on compliance all the time because I'll go in the MLS and the first thing I look at in compliance on your listings is I look at the listing date and I go to the MLS and I look at the date it was put in the MLS. And if they don't match or they're not within 2 days, I make you guys do a modification right away. Because if MLS comes in and audits us, I can be like, look, we did have the right date. And I'll go back to your TC or whoever and say, I need a modification. So it just alleviates not having to like do it later in the transaction. If you, or when you first take the listing, if you know something's gonna change, just fill out this modification and have your seller sign it. And their principal, it's just listed as principal on here for whatever reason. And then you have to sign it as well. Okay. That's it. That is it. You guys are welcome. Do you guys have any other questions? I don't want to keep you too long. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep, of course.
Do we have access to those, or do we have to wait?
Yeah, it's with your card boards. So when you join the board, they give you access to all of this stuff. When you join the board.
With the MLS series?
Not the MLS. The MLS is separate. But well, the board is, so join the board. Yes, SRCAR, when you join that, they give you access to all of these, and then MLS. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
all right, so I just have to tell you.
Yeah, you have to join it. Yes.
Well, no, I'm not gonna do it.
Okay, so you join it all? Okay, yeah. They'll send you like, all that stuff.
So bad.
Yeah.